But, and I can't say that I wasn't aware of the fact that we didn't have a lot, but it was a little bit better for me because I was last than it was for my older brothers and sisters. So everybody, that resilience, that grit, that get up, get it done. That's how I see the world. Yeah. I don't expect that anybody's coming to get me. Yeah. I don't expect it. So, and I think that is a very valuable mindset to have because for most people, that's what's true in the world. That's the reality. No, if you're expecting someone to take care of you, good luck.
Hard road.
Good luck.
Yes. How would you say? What suggestions would you say for like younger folk out there to kind of cultivate that resiliency in contemporary America? How would you kind of suggest they do that
now? First off, I would say, the basics have never changed. And it starts with really getting a good education. And if you don't get a good education in the school where you live, then you need to find other sources, other mentors, find after school programs, something, because without it, it's just hard to move around in the world. And I mean, when I say education, I don't mean just traditional education. Learn a skill, find out something that, young people are great. They're way better than I am with computers and, and technology and all of this stuff that's not going away. And because traditional jobs aren't there. They're not there. And the jobs that my mother and my father did, these are jobs now that immigrants do. Look around every time you're somewhere and you say, who's cleaning the office? Who's cleaning floors? Who's doing all this stuff? That was the stuff that my parents did. And I think and the next generation of young people, they're not doing that. Not having it. So if you're not going to do that, then you got to figure out, your way. Learn to do something. So I say learning is an experience that, is not just limited to what you learn in the classroom. My parents had very little in the way of formal education, but they got it. They figured out was okay, common sense, I think, is a little lacking. But
it's hiding sometimes, right now. I think something very important that you talked about that's just been so true in my life and the lives of the students. I was a teacher for 7 years, and also in the boys that I mentored through my fraternity, is that like, you need these mental frameworks to like move through the world. Right. And so when you say like education isn't just what you get in the classroom, right? It's the social interactions you're having in the classroom and outside of the classroom, in school and in your Walmarts or wherever you might find yourself. Like life is a class of education that you have to be receptive to. Right. You know what I mean?
And, and the thing that I make a point of in my book is that, I went to medical school. I learned as much from my mother about how to take care of things and, and how to judge who's sick, who's not sick. She learned that by, necessity. Yeah. But she knew it, she had it. And so she passed that on to me. And those are the kinds of life experiences that you can't get out of a book. They can't teach you that in med school.
Absolutely. Let's see. What is your definition of success and how has that been like cultivated by your community, your family and your experiences? I mean, you've done a lot. So what is your definition of success? Let's take me through that.
It's changed over, you get to have a different definition depending on what decade of life you're in.
Yeah. Absolutely.
When I was in my 20s, it was being able to live in my own apartment and be able to hang out. And, that was, I was like, oh, I'm good. Because before I went to med school, I worked for IBM for 3 years. Okay. So I thought I was like, okay, I'm good. But in my 30s, when I got to med school, I wanted to do well. I wanted to get out there and do something for people and for women. And I did that. I had my children, and success for me was at that point in my life raising whole children. And I have 3, and I've done that. So that's why I said it depends on where you are in life. But the one thing that success has never been high, that was never high on my list of things, is how much money I had. Because I've lived at every socioeconomic level that you can live at.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I'm any happier or feel any more sense of accomplishment at one stage or another, just simply based on how much money I have or had.
Absolutely.
But let's say, that being said, I've been poor. I'm not really interested in being poor again either now.
Yeah.
So, we gotta keep it real.
Keep it real. Absolutely. I mean, I'm 37 right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a son, and so when you're talking about how it changes, I think when I was in my 20s, it was kind of the same, you know, and maybe sprinkle a little bit of Air Jordans in there and things of that nature. But it has evolved. You know, I'm more interested in learning and growing and service, right?
Right.
What place does service kind of hold for you?
It's funny because my husband has worked in public service for the majority of his career. Mm. And so between the two of us, he's doing what he can do in government. And then when I was practicing medicine, it was like we got that sense of service from the jobs that we did every day. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like you had to go outside and figure out what am I going to sign up for now. I'm like, I gave at the office, but now that I have time, and that's something that has been in short supply for most of my life. But now that I have time, I realize I'm like, service for me means educating women. It means advocating for women and women's health, particularly in midlife. And anything that I can do to sort of elevate that conversation, that's where my attention is sort of directed at this point. And my husband is still, he's still got his day job, but he spends his time now working on voting and voting rights and redistricting, to make sure that people understand how important it is to have the right to vote, but to not only have the right to vote, to be able to vote in fair elections.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's been a problem. So that's sort of where he gets his and I get mine, and
Yeah. I mean, I think like you said, as you kind of grow through life, success kind of changes, and then also like your relationship to service, as you said, and same for me when I was a teacher, it was like, that's where it's at.
Right.
I'm in there, I'm in the trenches, I'm fighting the good fight, right? And now that I'm not teaching, I immediately took on that mentor service. That mentor group. And so it's a journey. Like life is a journey.
Right. But mentoring is key because I have to say my success in life has been really reinforced by the people I was around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And the people who were able to, take my hand and say, show me some things that I didn't even know were possible. And that's what we've got to do for this next generation. See, we're not looking back, and saying, oh, wasn't it great in the old days? No, it was not great in the old days. But the one thing that just sort of happened naturally when I grew up in segregated Mobile, Alabama. So all the Black people lived in one neighborhood. So in one neighborhood, you had teachers and people who you had maids, you had doctors. Everybody was in the same community. So you saw it. We were never just segregated where all the people, all the doctors and lawyers were over here. Okay, it was only two of them. So, you know what I mean?
But they were there. Yeah.
Right. But it wasn't enough that you could say, sort of divide by socioeconomic groups. So you went to your church. You went to church with people who did, your school teachers, all of that. You saw it. But again, you didn't have to really go out, and people would take you in. And, when you identify people that have some potential, and I think, and let me say, every child has potential. Absolutely, yeah. Every child has potential. It's just a matter of who's willing to cultivate that potential. Yeah. So that's why we have to be a little bit more intentional about our mentorship, because we have to sometimes go where the kids are.
You're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Because, they're not just going to run into you necessarily, in the grocery store or at church.
Yeah. That is a perfect perspective, and it makes perfect sense. Well, Dr. Malone, I thank you so much for stopping by and chatting with me. It has been transformative. I've learned and I've grown, and I'm sure that folks will be able to grow from it as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And go check out my music. I just told you.
Yes. 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 Awesome.